Hello, world. This is Salons for Life in conversation with our next facilitator for our salon on April 10th. That's a Sunday. And it's at 10 a.m. EST, 7:30 p.m. IST. And it's called Money Made Simple, hosted by Anu Seth. Hi, Anu. How are you?
All good. Good to go.
And also we have here another co-founder, the founder, but now I'm a co-founder of Salons for Life, Nirupa Umapathy.
Hi, Kate. Hi, Anu. Greetings from Puerto Rico.
Oh, I'm jealous of your background. So today, usually I conduct the interviews, Anu, with our facilitators, but I brought in Nirupa because you two have known each other for a while. You have it started as a friendship, just like her and my creative partnership began its roots in a loving friendship. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit, you both to talk about like your origin story a little bit. How did you two meet? And then since this salon is about money and finance, where did finance fit in with that picture?
Anu, do you want me to go first or do you want to go first?
Nirupa, go first.
I will say that it was friendship at first sight, Kate. We were introduced by a common friend, Radhika. Actually has coached me on and off for performance. And during a time when I was transitioning from a corporate career into this kind of self-employed / entrepreneurial career. And Radhika came back from India one day and she was like, you must meet Anu. And just like any amazing recommendation that a friend that you respect and admire makes, I followed up and we met in, I think maybe 2018 or 2019 in Bangalore. And the beauty of our connection, frankly, is not because we're two women that are in India and we're South Indian. We bonded on money and why it is such an essential component of our lives. While this may not seem like a magical thing for a lot of people, for me, frankly, to be able to talk about money openly without shame with someone that I don't know is one of the greatest levelers in terms of one of the greatest connective tissues of a human connection. So that's
and I'm sure it also had something to do with the fact that you both are women as well. Like it's very different to have a conversation about finance if I were to talk to a man, but two women, because typically I feel a little uncomfortable or barred out. Like those are for people who are wearing suits, those conversations, and that's not me. So I'm sure that had something to do as well with that camaraderie to be able to talk openly as two women about money.
It is. And also, Anu, you should speak to the generosity of how we met as well. It was not just you brought your two co-founders. And so I want to let you talk to the time when we met at the Bangalore club, and then we will kind of.
Yes, as Nirupa rightly put it, it was pretty much love at first sight. So I known Radhika from way back in 2002 when I was at INSEAD. And let me take you back to those days. And that was really where I started the economic journey for myself. So I'm typically a small town girl, got into corporate career with great ambition of, leading a corporate and making it big, as you said, in the black tie world. But money skills were not something that I came with. I'd invested a lot on education and I moved into software engineering. And then I think suffered or enjoyed all the three M's that I like to call it, marriage, movement, as well as motherhood. And that saw me changing from being a professional to being a stay-at-home mom. And through that journey, I knew that somewhere money was important, but I was not actively participating in that. It came as quite a shocker when we moved to INSEAD. My husband wanted to do his MBA there, and that's where I formed lovely relationship with Radhika, who was a co-partner while her spouse was studying. And those days I was doing a program for the World Bank, and it was very, very interesting to see how money was working, and we were identifying, I don't know, maybe this has to go off the record. We were trying to work and solve a solution where how does money go from one to the other? And who are the controllers of money? So that was really my first taste with economics. And then when I came back, I did corporate roles for a while, and then I switched into financial management, more so on my own portfolio management. And along the way, as my own family was growing and I was looking around myself to observe that people were not talking about money so easily. And it was we spoke about earlier, it was a great leveler. And I found that women particularly found it very awkward to speak about money matters. Either they did not know the jargon, or they felt like, they felt a little aloof. They looked at it as if, it wasn't their responsibility. And that is what the seeds of my organization were formed, with that awareness that, women need to know more. And the fact that I wish I knew this much earlier in life, because by then I was handling my money and I was undergoing the transformation journey the way you did, Kate. While we were in this bang on and trying to establish ourselves, Radhika came in with a recommendation for me to meet Nirupa. And that was so lovely to see the light of faith and hope from someone from your own fraternity. And when I first connected with Nirupa, we had so many common things to talk about. Like she said, this is what happens here. And I was like, yeah, okay, it's the same. This is what we are struggling with here. And we immediately bonded. And it was nice to meet her when she visited us in 2018. And I told my co-founders that, hey, the same kind of work is happening across the seas. We need to meet each other and see where the synergy is, or at least bounce off thoughts. So we caught up in Bangalore, in Bangalore Club, the same place that is the origin of Pay It Forward. We formed our company Pay It Forward right there over a discussion, like as Modi ji calls it, chai pe charcha. We just formed our Pay It Forward there. So it was lovely to meet Nirupa, and we decided that we need to speak about this across and cross-country connection, and the common layer that all women, and I think everyone in general, feels that there is no way to make money simple. So conversations like this are extremely important in helping us discover our own self. And I think what you guys are doing is amazing work in terms of radical self-care. This becomes one of an integral spoke in the wheel to complete the whole picture of self-care.
And to bank off of that, Nirupa, could you, because I know you've opened up our newsletter that we just sent out with a quote from Audre Lorde about radical self-care. Can you talk a little bit about the intersection between radical self-care and finance? Because when I hear finance and money, it's like the opposite of self-care. I just kind of go into like fight or flight mode.
Yeah, sure. I mean, thanks for asking the question, Kate. And the quote, and I'm not going to quote Audre verbatim. She is a Black mother, a feminist. She's a spiritual warrior. That's how I think about her. And the quote really, really resonated with me this year, because she talks about it within the context of her healing from cancer, okay? And her immunoreaction, her immunocompromised reaction, and how she needed to fortify herself so she could go out in the world. And the way she talks about going out in the world and showing up in the world, she talks about it as an act of political warfare. Now, Kate, Anu and I come from the country of the largest nonviolent revolution. So when I hear the word warfare, it immediately triggers me, because I immediately go into, but I don't believe in blood. I don't believe in bloodshed. But to use and to transmute a little bit of what Audre is also saying within the ethos of what we are trying to create, I think it is a fundamental act of revolution to show up to this world every day, feeling so fully empowered and so fully embodied in your potential, that you're able to be a force for good in your own life. And by being a force for good in your own life, you have the energy to go forth and be a force for good for the world, right? And the money aspect of it, and Kate, and I know you've talked about this many times, if you think about our own curriculum and how you and I started in 2018, it's ultimately three currencies. You have the creative currency, which we are born with. Innately, to be a human, you are creative because the act of living is an act of creativity. The second is mind body energy. And you and I both, as you as a yoga practitioner and me as someone that was trained in Pilates, again, it is the innate gifts of what have been given us. You know, you train it and you condition it. You condition your body, mind, and spirit so you show up with great power. I wanted to bring the same kind of the naturalness and the natural innate gifts that we have to money. And so when I think about money as a currency and the way it fits within our language and what we are trying to transform, is that as much as it is a derivative, meaning it is part of a system that has been given us, nothing stands in the way of us learning a language, does it? I mean, we need tools, we need a good community, we need someone to de-jargonize it. But for me, money is both a language and money is a creative flow. And it is in this realm that I always want to venture forward when I think about money. Yes, like technology, it is built by people with complex agendas. Yes, the language is arcane sometimes, but just like how we say, we don't show up to the world and say, am I going to use technology or not? We do. I think that we kind of have to reframe this a little bit in our own heads as well, which is that it is very much within the potential to be reframed and transmuted. And with that, I just think that with Anu, especially on radical self-care, what I told Anu is, I don't want us to go about it timidly. I want us to go about it very boldly, feeling empowered by our collective knowledge and feeling empowered by our collective experience. And is it a revolution? Does that connote bloody words to me? It may, but I think it is really part of a human revolution.
I agree. And I think coming from a country that is based on a lot of bloody revolutions and overthrows, I think what I have found, so I'll go into a little bit of our origin story, Nirupa. So I am a working artist. I'm an actor and a producer, a theater artist. And I, back in 2018, was teaching yoga classes at the yoga shala that Nirupa and I both attended. And I don't know, we just sort of were like, let's go out and get lunch well after this. And I was coming from a place of just like many other millennials my age, massive student debt, kind of following the path that was laid out of like, you go to school, you go to college, whatever it costs, worth it. Unfortunately, I think the kids today are kind of questioning that narrative. So I was, I think, working like probably 4 or 5 jobs at once, never had enough money, always was just kind of going from paycheck to paycheck. And in that little brunch hour between Nirupa and myself, we not only established the roots of like a really long lasting, lovely friendship, but she also very candidly told me that I'm never going to be able to do what I love unless I get my support system in place. And to kind of bring it back to what I was saying about the bloody revolutions in this country, in the United States, I think a lot of our social problems have the potential of being resolved by making the people who've been barred out of institutional leadership based on gender or race or any of the other sort of identity denoters that have excluded people and marginalized people for centuries. Just by giving them financial literacy, you change the game, actually, because then these people are not excluded from the monopoly board. They're an active participant. They know what to do. And I think that's one of the best ways. I feel more empowered within my own life with having financial literacy. Am I perfect at it? No. But having the support and safety net and resources built up to say like, hey, if something unexpected happens, I can I can still be in this game. I don't have to move back home. I don't have to forgo what my creative capital is. I can still pursue it, and I can take chances. Even better, I can take chances, and so I can really say what I want to say as an artist. So I totally agree. And I'd like to direct to the question of like, why Pay It Forward is the name, because I think it is in line with exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, Anu?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask this backstory to Kate, to Pay It Forward, Kate. Interestingly, my co-founders, both Preeta and Vinita, we are also very thick friends. And I've known Preeta for a very long time. In fact, she was my first friend when I moved to Bangalore. So it's been a long-standing thing. And our children were growing up and we were fearing some of the things that you spoke about, like, how youngsters would react to money and everything. After all, just like how we speak about you having a creative skill or being able to cook food or do yoga, money is also just a skill, and we were discussing quite passionately. We were all discussing about how we can pay this forward, and we've learned it late in life. So how do we ensure that we are able to translate this to our next generation, and how do they benefit from it and save the learning curve for them? And this was a repeated phrase in our mind. I've learned it. I really want to pay it forward, and it's a wonderful catchphrase. So we named it Pay It Forward. It's a global concept where, if, let's say, Nirupa does something good to me, instead of doing something a favor back to her, I go ahead and do a favor back to you, Kate. And thus we just build the whole ecosystem and the network. Interestingly, when I think about money, I also find that Pay It Forward is very apt from the point of view of power of compounding, because it's like spreading the word from one seed to multiple. And then if each one just keeps spreading the word further, we're going to create a great human chain where we can all be financially aware and financially literate.
Yeah, I love this. And I have a question based on this too. When I hear about either finance or just like corporate structures, this sort of compounding effect doesn't really resonate when I think about that. Do you think this sort of ethos comes from the root of what you said? Your mother, you have friendships with and it's a women-led organization. Do you think that allows you the grace and the opportunity to function a little bit differently than the normal sort of like corporate structure or normal sort of financial models?
Oh yes, being a women-led organization and all women founders, I think we have amazing synergy in terms of being able to understand how our audiences are feeling. There's a strong sense of empathy towards the subject, so you can really step into the shoes and visualize how complex one would be feeling. I think as women, we have traditionally, I'm sure I can say this for the generations before us, even in the US, we have been traditionally the people who look after family or visualize the needs of the family better. As Mother Nature has blessed us in terms of being able to care and empathize with another human soul more easily. Also, women are not very competitive as compared to the male counterparts. Of course, we'll see a lot of alpha women now, but nevertheless, I think there is a stronger sense of group wellness that a woman feels towards, and I think that's the biggest strength that we bring to the table in being able to empathize better and being able to visualize how one would be one can behave in a certain manner. In those situations, women are clear winners over the male counterparts.
And I think it's also affected Salons for Life as well, Nirupa, if you want to talk about that, because we're also a women-led organization as well.
Yes.
I mean, I will say two things. One, actually, Kate, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Preeta, Vinita, and Anu are actually the basis for my inspiration in terms of our
Oh,
current structure, in terms of
talk about an origin story.
yeah, that's an origin story in itself. When I met them, I said, wow, when at that time I was still a solopreneur. I was doing everything sort of co-creating with artists like you. But then I was like, wow, could I be part of a marriage that looks like this? And in fact, we are nerds. So I asked them like, so what was the three criteria for your selection? And, they went into many things, like you are aligned by a similar mission, you're aligned by a similar way of doing a similar vision. But the third thing that they said, which is so important, which is that you're aligned in your way of problem solving. And I think that for me, I took that home. And shortly after, 1 year later, I met Sybil. I mean, it's not that I didn't know Sybil, but Sybil and I are kind of connected through the yoga community and similar values, right? And we both had a similar value of paying it forward. We both had done very well in our own careers, and we had a financial foundation. And we both had an ethic that we wanted to distribute and share the wealth and the knowledge. And then you came along and if you remember, our early partnership as well was to create creative capital that we could share joyfully with the community. Because for us in salons, both the community and the curriculum are important, but the community is as important as the curriculum. And in the concept of community, I think is the concept of paid forward, as Anu so beautifully said on the human chain. The other thing that I do want to add on the power of compounding is I think about it intergenerationally. And in that sense, I would say that I come from a family where my father's side of my family, my grandmother brought up 8 kids on a schoolmaster, half a schoolmaster's salary. And she had to get the cows milked and have, like distribute milk. And she had to rent the downstairs to kind of send, some of her kids to school. Not all, my father had to drop out of college to support the family. But when he graduated, when he took his first job and he sent money back home, and he created the beginnings of a lower middle class lifestyle for me and my mother and my sister. So my dad was the role model of guardianship. And so he had transformed the cycle from poverty, so to speak, for at least for me, it was poverty, even though they had a house, to where we were, which is a lower middle class lifestyle. He sent me off to the US with like $1,000, which at that time he couldn't really afford. But from there on, because of paid forward, I got financial aid from an alumna of Smith College. I was able to come to America. I got an internship from a Smith alumna on Wall Street, paid forward. She recruited back a woman to go back into finance. I joined an internship, which was all about paid forward, where they said, you are lucky because you got recruited as a minority into a program, a highly competitive program. Every year you give back. And you give back either financially or you give back through your mentorship, right? And so that is also the basis for us. But I would say that the sharing, as Anu called, the human chain of sharing of knowledge and habits and mindsets has the potential to transform intergenerationally. Kate, from where, just like recount to the audience as well, from when I first met you at Beechwood in Jersey City, you're talking about X amount in student loans. So let's say a percentage number. 2 years later, where were you? You had paid down your student debt by so much and you had consolidated, and you were on your way to taking advantage of the SBA program, and you had applied for loans as a small business entrepreneur. Now, for me, that is a cycle of transformation within 3 years. That is so powerful. And I think I want our audience to walk away with that story. Because the ocean of what finance is, the ocean of what Wall Street is, the ocean of big tech, it's an ocean. But we can have little rivers and tributaries in between, doing our own thing and kind of creating wellness and wealth in our own way, is what I want.
And I think you really bring up a strong point too for people attending the salon on April 10th, is that especially in this country, we tend to prize the individual over everything else. And I think it's almost impossible, especially based on what you both have just said, to decontextualize the individual from the community, both in how the community affects the individual and then the vector for change that you as an empowered individual can be within that community, and how the ecosystem that you build around you is actually something that really can either build you or take you down. with that being said, I'd love to learn a little bit more just about how Pay It Forward kind of interacts with the clients, maybe a few like anecdotes of success, and then moving into, as you come in to facilitate this next salon, Anu, how what people can expect within the salon based on the models that you've created with Pay It Forward.
Yeah, so Pay It Forward, first of all, by God's grace, we've been very, very lucky. And I think the whole purpose, and both me and my husband strongly believe in this, that the purpose of business is to build community. And if you go back to the evolution of man, you shared work only because only to save time and be more efficient. And isn't that what businesses are doing? So building community was very close to my heart. And we started off with doing school programs. And it was almost like, the world was waiting for something like this. Our first intervention was at my daughter's school because the principal had opened the doors when she was in grade 12, saying that any parent who wants to come in and speak about a subject is welcome. And me, in my, the aggressive Indian mom style, wrote to them that, hey, I want to speak about money. So they invited me. And I think more than me, the principal had stories to narrate about how the next generation, how she was concerned about the way the next generation was thinking of money, instant gratification, and how she was dealing with trying to explain to them her own way. Now, as any mother figure would want it, you want to sit up and speak about this to your child, but it's not so easy because teenagers don't want to be preached to. She gave us a forum of 100 children, 100 17-year-olds, and that's not easy, So I stood up there and I spoke to them, and it came back to me how important the conversation was because they were all thinking about it, but they did not know who to ask, where to ask, and how do they simplify it. I think the biggest lesson that I got from there was that a boy walked up to me and he said, we don't have these conversations at home. So it's not a dining table conversation at all. And the family was transitioning from a low middle class to an upper middle class. And obviously, the lessons that the parents could share were very limited as compared to what he would have to deal with in his life. And that's where I felt a very strong connection about money and child psychology, because, we bring in some of these habits that we learn around us and some of these skills that we learn around us. And there's a big vacuum in case we've not been in that environment. So that made the whole journey for Pay It Forward very purposeful. Another anecdote that comes to my mind is that we started off as a very women-centric organization, and we wanted to do this program only for women. And one of our clients stood up and he said, hey, I think men need it equally. And what makes you think that they don't need it? So why don't we want you to do a program for both men and women? So he opened the doors to a mixed group. And now, as it stands, we do more programs which are a mixed group than just women programs. So that was interesting. And there was another ask that there was a company where they have a large chunk of it's one of the old organizations in India, and they have a mature workforce, and several of their employees were about to retire in the next 5 years. And they showed faith and came back to Pay It Forward to say that, hey, we want you to speak to them about how to manage their money once they get retirement. After all, you earn all your life to build the nest egg. And we all know that India does not offer the kind of social security and medical facilities that the West does. And all individuals need to look after those needs from their own resources. Now, this is an important piece of financial planning and well-being in every person's journey in life, where you save up and you invest, and you ought to have a nest egg, and then dip into that. As lifespans are increasing, we know that we've got another 20, 30 years where we are going to work, use up the nest egg. Interestingly, a lot of youngsters want to say that we want to retire early, and I want to step out from a formal workforce in my 40s or 30s, as early as 30s as well. So when we spoke to that cohort, it was very surprising and very heartening to see that, very few of them actually had this sorted and planned out in their mind. So I personally like to believe that the Pay It Forward program has helped them and anchored them in a way that it has been useful for them. We also got to realize that this was an intervention needed at every stage, uh, right from a school child to a person much older. Um, yeah, so those were some of the interesting learnings that I've been through.
And that's very much in line with like our ethos at Salons for Life, which is come as you are. So wherever you are in your financial landscape of your life, whatever stage of life you're in that has different financial demands, you can just come as you are, not expect, you don't have to be expected to be at a certain juncture. Yeah.
Each person's life journey is very different, and to provide a safe zone for us to have these conversations is one of the purpose at Pay It Forward. And I'm sure that's what you have in mind, Nirupa, for salons as well, that this is a safe space where you can come and discover yourself. Coming to what I have in mind for the 10th of April, I think first, the biggest takeaway anyone who comes to us is building a little bit of financial confidence. So we're going to have discussions. You can come as you are, as Kate beautifully said. Bring your whole self with no inhibitions, and there's not going to be any judgment. There will be money stories that we share. And money stories are good stories as well. This is how we've learned from each other. This is how we grow. So I'm sure if you reflect back, you'll have one good money habit. So come and share that with us. We can walk through some of the to-dos and not to-dos, points to ponder, things to be careful of in the money journey. And some amount, I think Nirupa is very passionate about this. So we will definitely speak about how how money stories from our childhood impact the way we deal with it in our future. So if we could do some corrective action there. And I would like to introduce one or two tools which will help you navigate it better, and take pen to paper and have fun.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that I'm super excited. Kate, the reason I'm also excited is this is the first time we actually are doing a cross-cultural facilitation on money, and in a way, I think that Anu knows this already. We always like to come in not only feeling like all are welcome and where we are at this point in time, but also we do like to remain in the realm of a lab, which is that it's okay for us to show up in many different stripes. And some of the stories that we share might be bumpy. Some of those stories might be absolutely inspiring and liberating. And what I do want to say is that we role model in all the ranges of vulnerability that we come through with, right? The second thing I also want to say, I'm super excited, is because for me, for the longest time, money has seemed so specific to the context. So in America, the business of money seems to be so different from the business of money in India. But I think what Anu and I discussed is that we are going to try to transcend and zoom up in a way where we talk about patterns and mindsets and money scripts, the narratives and the stories that we inherit from as children. All of these are very cross-cultural, and these are very intercultural. They transcend culture in that sense. And I think for the audience, what I'm super excited about is for us to have a coming together in a way where we zoom out and we actually look at what we actually have more in common than we have that is separating us. Anu, is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think absolutely bang on.
I was just going to say the last thing is that, so, Kate, and you know how strongly I feel about this. We also want this to be an artistic experience. What I mean by that is the art of good guided conversation is an art. The art of talking about a difficult subject and to be able to hold space for stigmas and internal conflicts and the way it shows up as external conflicts is an art. So at the end of the day, this is not going to be a traditional personal finance seminar where we're sitting there beating someone on the head. It's a conversation. We come in and we show up and we show ourselves to the extent that we want to show ourselves in our act of self-discovery, because you can be introverted about it in the salon. You don't necessarily have to share, but if you feel compelled to share, we are going to hold space almost like we would do in a sangha, in a yoga studio, but it's around money. And that's the whole idea of reframing the experience around it as well.
Yeah, and I would say, speaking for like the artists that attend, because we not only have artists facilitate, we also have artists attend too. For me, talking about money has been such a relief. I'll share a little personal anecdote that came up when you were talking about childhood stories. So when I was very young, under the age of 10, I lived in Michigan at the time, so you have basements, and we had a lovely finished basement, and the city had something go wrong with their piping and it got flooded with sewage. And I remember there being like a big lawsuit. And I mean, it was very invasive because it was in my home, and my sister was born with some respiratory issues. So she had a lot of medical things happen because the basement was flooded. And I remember this so vividly, and I haven't thought about this in years until we were just talking about it. But I remember getting in the car from school one day, and my mom turned around and she was like, "We won." And she had a big stack of money. And I didn't realize this until actually just now. I associated money with being a passive thing that just happens to you when things either go wrong or go right. And what really changed when I started having conversations around money, like unfiltered conversations of just where I am, what changed is that I became the agent of change in terms of, no, money just doesn't happen to me. I can build the right structure so that I can be an active participant in the journey to not win money, to earn money, to gain money, to invest money, that I could be the agent of change in all of that. So if I can come from that point to that point, I think especially, for anybody, but I talk from the perspective of like an artist that grew up, yes, very lower middle class in this country, that it is possible to reframe your conversations in your head around it through the conversations that we can hold in this safe space. Thank you both for I love conversations like this because as you were saying earlier, Anu, like they're empathetic. They're not scary when it comes to finance or more corporate structures. I appreciate the compassion and empathy with which they're held. If there's anything else either of you would like to say before I wrap it up.
I think money is not rocket science. And it's just a matter of understanding how to use it, just like you use your body, you use your food, you use an art form. Not knowing this would actually mean a headstand with money worries flushing into your head rather than, the peace that needs to come from the deep vinyasa you're doing in a yogic pose like a headstand. So it's very interesting to have these conversations and use the power of money to your benefit. I think it's extremely empowering. And once you taste what financial freedom is, you don't need too much to achieve financial freedom. You'd need to know what is happening with the money and keep it very simple. It doesn't have to be a complex structure for an individual. You don't need to be a Wall Street pro to be able to do well and feel financially free. There are challenges with earning, But there are multiple uses of money, you know. It's not just spending, spending, and more spending. There are alternatives to money, and we need to explore them, understand them, imbibe them, and empower ourselves with the money power and money skills. And I hope to unravel that with your audience, Nirupa and Kate.
Kate, I would just say one last thing, which is just like how you said money can happen to me, I can happen to money. What I want to
Yay.
mean by
Yes.
that is that I want to show up to money, and I do. And after my divorce, I reframed it and I said that money is my silent spouse that sits in my corner and wants to work for me. I want people to get a glimpse of the fact that I can happen to money, which is I can show up any given day with joy, curiosity. I can show up with a lot of questions. Right now where I'm sitting, there's a beautiful garden in the back, and it's growing because Titi, auntie, is actually like watering the plants right now, you know, and she makes sure that she feeds the hens and the chickens. And the same way in your money garden, you know, you can grow an apple tree and you know, like a guava tree, whatever you want to grow, but you know, you show up that day and you water the tree, you know, and when you don't know what fertilizer to use, you call up Anu or Kate or whoever knows how to grow an apple tree and a guava tree in the backyard. And I'll say the last thing is that as much as money has been made too arcane and complex, we live now in the world of open source information. Of course, you have to discern where the quality of information is good and where it's not, but we have at our fingertips, if we want, lots of free ways to access to de-jargonize money, but find your community where you can safely and, you know, like safely unpack the questions that you have and the doubts that you may have. The community is very, very important. So join us on April 10th for that community.
And you can register for that event online at our website, salonsforlife.com/RSVP, and you'll see the link. I will say that this salon is part of the 2022 Children Interrupted Fund, meaning that a portion of all of the proceeds we receive for the salon, and it is a sliding scale donation-based model that we have of ticketing. So a portion of all of that will go to an NGO or an organization that really takes care of respecting and rehabilitating the dignity and well-being of children. In particular, the salon, we are partnering with Kranti, and you can see our interview for that in our YouTube channel with Trina, who is one of the co-founders of Kranti, which is a beautiful organization that goes toward rehabilitating and promoting the welfare, but also the success of young women and mothers who are in the red light districts in India, who have either been sex trafficked or just born into that circumstance. So it's a really beautiful organization. Please join us April 10th. And that's a Sunday, 10 a.m. EST, 7:30 p.m. IST. Thank you both.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Anu.
Thank you, Nirupa. Thank you, Kate. I'm really looking forward to this.